Hello and welcome to FatBoss Weekly Season 2, Episode 8.
Hello, and for the people who don't know, FatBoss Weekly is our weekly show where we talk about stuff that in the news that has happened and the stuff we're interested in, really.
Pretty much.
Yes, and a lot has happened that we're interested in, really, and it's crazy. Blizzard have recently put up on their website a huge blog post about loads of Warlords of Draenor stuff, Lawrence. It's absolutely nuts.
This whole episode's pretty much going to revolve around Warlords of Draenor. Loads of information's come out in the past week, and it's all very, very exciting. And we're going to go sort of through some of the news. We're going to give your own thoughts. And to start off, we're going to talk about the most recent blog post that came up on Blizzard's website, which came out within like sort of 24 hours of us actually recording this. Well, they started off by saying development is progressing well, and we're soon to be ready to enter the first phases of public testing, which means
coming soon.
Beta's coming soon.
Ah, well excited. Hopefully that actually comes to fruition. I can't wait to claw my way into it. It's going to be good. But they did continue on by talking about the stat squish. Now, they said, after multiple expansions and content updates, we've reached a point where numbers for health, damage, and other stats are so big, they're no longer easy for players to grasp.
And they also go on to say something about the character's power spike. They believe it's too sort of large when you hit certain levels. If you can see on like this graph that they supplied, it's just a bit crazy.
Yeah.
So they've sort of like, they want to like level that out. So they went on to say, in order to bring these things down to a more understandable level, we're reducing the scaling of stats throughout the game and smoothing out those obsolete spikes, which is like when you hit those certain level points.
Yeah.
Like when you hit level 70, suddenly all the level 70 gear is so much stronger than all the level 69 gear from the previous expansion. So they want to try and level that out, which makes sense. They just want to make it more sort of linear through the questing content from 1 to 85. And they also stated that this applies to creatures, spells, abilities, consumables, and gear, everything, essentially. And while that means your numbers for stats and damage is being reduced by a huge amount, that goes for the same with the creature's health and damage output. For example, a fireball that previously hit a creature for 450k out of his 3 million health, 15% of his health, may now hit that same creature for 30k out of its 200k health, which is still 15%. And here's a graph to sort of show the mob's healths and everything. But yeah, they're just sort of explaining the item squish a little bit more.
They also said it's important to understand that this isn't a nerf in effect. You'll still be just as powerful, but the numbers that you'll see will just be easier to comprehend. This also won't reduce your ability to solo old content. In fact, to provide some additional peace of mind, we're implementing further scaling of your power against lower level targets so that earlier content will be even more accessible than it is now. So really, what they've said here is that overall, yeah, it's not getting enough. We already know that it's just
we already
flat
worked this one out.
Everyone knows how it works now. But the fact that they said that they're going to make earlier content easier for you to solo, is that what they're saying?
By the sounds of it, they might introduce something like, if you're higher than that target, you do additional damage to that target. That's how it sounds.
I don't really like the sound of that, to be honest. I like going back to old instances and finding it like, so the mobs still hit the same amount and I still doing the same amount of damage. Like recently on my Hunter,
but you're not, because you have more armor.
Well, you know what I mean? Like recently on my Hunter, I went and did like Blackwing Descent, and it was like some sort of a challenge. Like, because I had to
solo,
so to kind of work out what the bosses did. I didn't manage to solo it eventually, but like...
Well, if they do bring in something like that, that could potentially ruin it for people like you, but I don't think there's a lot of people out there who are doing what you're trying to do.
Well, I think there is a fair amount, so I think they've got to be careful with that, but we'll have to see how exactly it works.
They also said at the bottom of this post, we're removing all base damage on player spells and abilities and readjusting attack power or spell power scaling as needed, making it so that all specializations will scale at the same rate.
That sounds good.
Yeah, so it looks like they're going to be changing how spells are going to be working. Rather than going directly off their base amount, it'll be going off your gear and your gear only. Which makes level 1s interesting, because you have no stats.
Well, I assume that they'll have some base amounts there, but overall, yeah, that sounds pretty cool overall.
Now, moving on from the stat squish, they also released some more information about the racials. Now, in this blog post itself, they said some racials are overpowered, and some racials that grant hit and expertise are being removed and replaced, because hit and expertise is being removed from the game in Warlords of Draenor anyway. To keep the racials more in line with one another, we decided to bring down a couple high outliers, then establish a fair baseline and bring everyone else up to that. We're accomplishing this by improving old passives, removing obsolete ones, and adding a few new ones where necessary. Our goal is to achieve a much better parity among races. I mean, that makes sense that they're doing this, because right now, for example, if you're a Horde player, if you want to be like doing your maximum DPS, as a ranged DPS at least, you just go troll.
Well, yeah, if you're a caster, most of the time you'll go troll.
Because it's just berserking as OP. So they're trying to make all the racials as sort of... I mean, they're not going to make them the same, because that'd just be fucking boring. I mean, what's the point? But they're making it so you don't have to be a certain class to do your maximum DPS. They want people to start using Taurens again. Yeah. That sort of idea. Because right now you sort of have to pick certain things. But yeah, there was no information on what they're doing with the racials on this post. However, some of the Blizzard devs on Twitter have been releasing some information. And for the Alliance, what we know so far is that humans are going to be losing the Mace and Sword racial, and the Human Spirit racial becomes a plus number to 2 secondary stats of your choice. So you can actually change this and choose what stats you want depending on what your spec is.
That sounds pretty sweet.
Which is really cool. I really like this idea because it allows you to customize it as much as you want.
And because of the Mace and Sword racial giving you expertise, you don't need that. It's gone. So that's good that that's gone.
Yeah.
The Draenei's Heroic Presence is now plus a certain amount to your primary stat. So they kind of changed that up as well. But the Gift of the Naru, the healing that you can do, it seems to heal the same amount, but over 5 seconds instead.
Now, as a Night Elf, you'll now get a movement speed increase 2% passively, which is pretty awesome. But you've also got a completely new passive, which is pretty awesome, called Touch of the Heirloom. And how it works is that if you're playing the game during night, or at least when the server's during night, you have 1% haste. Right. However, if it's during the day, you have 1% crit.
Holy shit, that's so
cool.
Which
is, I like that. I like that a lot.
I can imagine you pulling the boss to say for the first part of the boss you need like that extra haste, and then like just make it so the boss transitions as the server goes to nighttime, so then you get the crit instead. Or that would be amazing. I don't know how balanced that is. Of course, these are all like kind of up in the air.
Yeah, I mean these could change, but
that is pretty fucking
I like
clever.
That a lot.
I like that.
Now the Gnome's Escape Artist has been dropped to a 1-minute cooldown from 1.5. And the short blade specialization became a new one called Nimble Fingers, which is just a flat 1% haste. Also, a tweak to Expansive Mind, which was your 5% maximum mana, and that was it. It's now 5% maximum mana, energy, rage, or runic power.
Which is pretty fucking cool.
Which means that it's not just like useless for gnome warriors or whatever. It's, you know, you can now use it for everyone.
Now dwarves have lost their of course their mace specialization and crack shot, because yeah, it doesn't need to be there, but they've gained Might of the Mountain, which is a passive that adds 2% crit damage and healing,
so which sounds very strong.
Yeah, so when you do crit, your damage, it will be amplified at 2% more, so that sounds really, really good. Also, they're changing stone form, so it also removes magic and curses. However, it still cannot be used while CC'd, so it isn't a CC breaker or anything like that.
So it shouldn't be that overpowered in PvP.
Yeah, it shouldn't be too
Either way, it sounds very, very strong.
Yeah, it does sound very, very strong.
Now, as for the Horde, the Undead are seeing relatively few changes, which I don't really get. They're tweaking the scaling rate of the Touch of the Grave, and the Will of the Forsaken is now a 3-minute cooldown rather than a 2-minute cooldown. Orcs were one of the outliers we brought down. They lost the Axe specialization because, yeah, don't need it anymore. And Hardiness is now a 10% stun reduction, down from 15%, so not a massive change. Blood Fury is unchanged, so that's still going to be there.
Yeah,
still going to give you the
really
DPS
good.
increase. And every man for himself, they're still evaluating. They're not sure what they're going to be doing with that just yet.
Now, Blood Elves gain Arcane Acuity, which is a 1% crit passive, so I guess that's alright. And Arcane Torrent has changed. It now restores like runic power and all the rest of it. Actually gives you those
it actually
things.
gives you rage, chi, and all that things, as well as mana. So
that's pretty fucking
It's
sweet.
a very similar change to all the gnome racial. Now, the Tauren's Endurance becomes a plus amount of stamina, which it is now more or less. However, they get a new one called Brawn, which is a new passive which increases the crit damage and healing by 2%. Same as the Alliance.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're just following that thing. Trolls Berserking, be nerfed.
Good, to be honest. It was far too strong. Like, giving them a 20% like haste sort of thing is crazy. So they are reducing it down to 15%. I'm not sure if that's a big enough nerf, really.
No, well, they haven't said, and there's no information on any other passives for them just yet. But we'll have to see. And everyone's probably sitting there thinking, why didn't you talk about Worgens? And, of course, we still haven't spoken about Goblins. But they did say not much is going to be happening to them. They were about a baseline.
And, of course, with Pandas as well. I'm surprised that Pandas didn't really make this list. I feel that the Panda's well-fed buff is actually really quite strong.
No, I think it's fine.
But I think, like,
considering all of these, I think it's fine.
Yeah. I
because
think it's
these are considerable buffs.
Yeah.
To the racials.
Especially for Alliance side, I think.
Yeah.
Which is good because
well, the Horde ones were always OP anyway, which is because of Troll. But
yeah,
the Alliance ones are now far more decent.
So yeah, that's awesome. My favourite has to be the Night Elf one though. That's just really cool.
Now the next part of this post did talk about the abilities, and they sort of went in depth about this, and we're going to sort of read it all out for you guys, and then we'll talk about how we feel about it. What they stated is, over the years, we've added significantly more spells and abilities than we've removed, and the game's complexity has steadily increased. We're to the point now where players are starting to get overwhelmed. While the game is loaded with niche abilities that could theoretically be used in some rare scenario, in reality, many of these are barely used at all, and in some cases, the game would simply be better off without them. For Warlords of Draenor, we decided that we needed to pare down the number of abilities available to each class and spec in order to remove some of that unnecessary complexity. That means restricting some of the abilities to certain specs that really need them, instead of being class-wide and outright removing some of the abilities. It also includes removing some spellbook clutter, such as passives that can be merged with other passives or base abilities. It did go on to say this does not mean that we want to reduce the depth and gameplay or dumb things down. We still want players to face interesting decisions during combat, and we still want skill to matter. But we can achieve that without the needless complexity in the game now, and we can remove some of the game's more convoluted mechanics while maintaining depth and skill variety. One type of ability that we're focused on removing is temporary power buffs, and this is where it gets a little bit special, aka cooldowns. Removing these helps achieve one of our goals, which is to reduce the amount of cooldown stacking in the game. In cases where a class or spec has multiple cooldowns that typically end up getting used together, often in a single macro, we merge them or remove some of them entirely. The process of determining which skills and abilities to cut or change is a very complex one, and we know that every ability feels vital to someone, and we don't want to take this process lightly. Even if we end up cutting half of your favourite ability, we hope you'll understand why we did it in the context of our larger goals for the expansion. Ultimately, the point of these changes is to increase players' ability to understand the game, not reduce gameplay depth.
Okay, so there's a lot there.
There's a lot of information.
First off, the spellbook clutter that I noticed. The fact that some of the passives are getting merged together, that doesn't matter at all. Oh well, now whatever is called something else because it's all stacked on top of each other. I think that's quite nice because it allows you... To be honest, I wouldn't mind if all of my passives were just under one subheading called passive, and it just told me every single passive that I had instead of having to search through them all and understand what goes on.
I think that would be a good way to do it. Some sort of sorting,
Yeah, so it's nice and easy. To do with the cooldowns, though, I think... this is a difficult thing. Some classes, okay, they do have a lot of cooldowns.
I mean, let's take Hanson and Shaman, for example. On the pull, you literally need to press like 6 buttons or 5 buttons before you actually start doing your rotation.
Yeah.
Because you have so many cooldowns that you need to press. Whereas if they like put them all in one thing, it'd be a lot easier.
But I think that having cooldowns separate allows you to make more decisions in combat. Like sometimes say, I know that, the boss is going to transition in a minute, and I've got to save my cooldowns for that transition, but I still need a little bit more damage to get him to that point in time. Then I can maybe use one. Yeah, so I can save my smaller one. Oh, I can use my smaller one and use my bigger one later. However, if they're combined, it's like push this button to do more damage. That's it. Instead of actually using it, like thinking about where you need to use these cooldowns. In all fairness, because we don't have like any specific examples of what they're removing, we can't exactly say, oh, this is ruining it.
Yeah.
But all they might do is just like remove 1 or 2 from each class or something, or just make it so it's not as bad. But as long as they make it so you can still make meaningful choices during combat with your cooldowns, because cooldowns is like, as a DPS, is very, very important to know when to use them and what ones you want to use at what points.
Yeah.
It's not always good just to plonk them all down at the same time, because shit can just go wrong if you do that.
Earlier on in the week, before this post came out, one of the devs did tweet out, or I think it might have been one of the interviews, that they are removing roughly 20% of all player abilities in the game. Which is a large amount of abilities, to be fair.
Yeah, I can understand, though, because some abilities are complete and utter useless, really. You never ever
they're very, very, very situational.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a lot of low-level leveling abilities that you don't use past a certain level.
Yeah,
like for Shaman's Primal Strike, you never use that at level 90, ever. So unless they change that, I don't know. But yeah, I think removing ability... I think the game right now it has a good amount of abilities. I think they removed 20% of them. I don't think it's going to do a massive amount of damage to the game. But, I mean, if they was to add even more abilities, I know myself, personally, I think I would struggle keybinding everything.
Yeah, at the moment, I've got a certain amount of keybinds. I can talk about my Hunter, because some of the moves I don't even bother having on my bars as my Hunter. They're not even there.
Yeah.
Like,
I think everyone does.
Like, I haven't got Flare as on my Hunter. I don't need it. I don't use it.
You don't use it for raiding.
Exactly, because I use it for raiding. I don't have Scattershot. I imagine some of the PvPers don't have some of my PvE moves that I use or whatever. So, like, I feel that some abilities can easily be removed. But I think at the moment, the amount of abilities is just about right. Of course, they might want to add some new abilities in the expansion anyway, so we'll have to kind of see. It's a bit...
Yeah, we kind of need more information before we can make any sort of fat boss decision on before we give the fat boss seal of improvement. But yeah, either way, I think removing some of the spells is a good idea, but hopefully they don't like ruin the cooldown side of things. I think cooldowns are very, very important. and it does add some sort of complexity to DPS. Whereas now, if they do remove cooldowns, or just literally every DPS class has one DPS cooldown, that just seems very shit to me.
Yeah.
Because it's literally do your rotation and then press this when you get a trinket proc, or your pots off cooldown, or this shines.
Yeah.
You know, it just seems a bit shit, but we'll see. Now, moving away from abilities, they did talk a little bit about crowd control. We're going to go over this very quickly.
Yeah, so...
it's not really our department, because it's more focused at PvP anyway. They did say, one other big takeaway from Mists of Pandaria is that there's currently simply too much crowd control in the game, especially when it comes down to PvP. To address that, we knew that we needed across-the-board disarmament. Here's a summary of the player cast CC changes. And here they are all on the screen now.
Yeah, because there are quite a lot of them.
Quite a lot of them. We're not going to go through it.
It is very PvP focused, and we're not experts at PvP, so I can't say, oh, that cyclone change is going to ruin it for druids, because I don't fucking know. There it is up on the screen for you to peruse at. I suppose it's overall a fairly good thing. Once again, it's kind of reducing...
Well, the one thing that I do think is cool is that all stuns now share the same DR category, which is really, really good. How it's going to work in Warlords, so they do keep these changes, is in PvP you are not going to be CC'd for 45 seconds. You'll be CC'd for maybe 20 tops now. Whereas before you could get literally CC'd forever, almost, which was just ridiculous. So, yeah, they've made it so you can actually play your character rather than just waiting for your PvP trinket to come up. So, yeah.
Good.
That's how it's going. So that's everything there is on that blog post.
Yep.
Which is a lot of information, and it's cool that Blizzard are releasing some of this information. But there is a lot of information they have also released, but not officially. Well, it is still official because they are representatives of Blizzard.
Yeah, like on Twitters.
Yeah, it's been people on Twitters and on the interviews with various different gaming websites and fan sites. And we've sort of like compiled everything that's happened over the past week. And to start off, there was an interview with Blizzard Dev, and they were talking about the level 90 boost. And here's some of the replies he had.
Yeah, so they said that the level 90 boost is being sold to allow players that would have purchased multiple copies of WoW to get more level 90 characters to do so in like a more reasonable way. Because that was one big concern. People were saying, like...
everyone's just going to buy Warlords 100 times just to get all their fucking characters.
It does make sense that's what they're doing. The price point was decided upon to avoid devaluing the accomplishment of leveling a character to level 90.
So that's why it was $60.
Well, yeah, $60. It kind of depends what you like, how much you rate your time versus money. Because let's just say like an average level 90, you could probably spend about
24 hours.
Probably higher than that, to be honest.
Maybe 48 hours.
Yeah, so about 1 or 2 days of gameplay. So $60, like, to be honest, that's like £1, $1.50-ish an hour.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So. But that's still gameplay, it's not work. So you've got to kind of... Yeah. Some people see it as work. Some people see it as gameplay. So...
If you see it as work, you're playing the wrong fucking game.
Well, people... That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying about the leveling experience. Is that some people just see it as a chore, where some people really enjoy leveling and stuff like that. So I think the price point is roughly in the right place, to be honest. The dev said that if Blizzard's goal was to sell as many boosts as possible, they would have set the price point a lot lower. The price point wasn't selected to maximize profit, just represent the amount of time that it takes to get to level 90. Because if it was like $10, everyone would just go, right, fuck it, I'll buy that. Because I think that is very true, to be honest, of the price point.
One thing that made me very happy is what they said about how the level 90 boost is going to work for new players, people who haven't hit level 90 yet. And what was said was the level 90 character boost will work differently if you already own a high level character or not. If this is your first character and you boost it to level 90 directly, the game will offer you 3 or 4 skills in the first place to let you familiarise yourself with the game, and it will give you more abilities progressively. You unlock your skills progressively. For example, a mage could start with Frostbolt, Frostnova and Polymorph, and from there you get more abilities.
That's an amazing thing to put in. Because
that was one of our concerns we brought up when we were sort of discussing it previously, is that for new players this is going to be like really bad because they're just going to have all these things thrown at them and they're not going to enjoy it.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because like if you do recruit a friend before and you've like boosted a character straight to level 85 from like level 1, you go into your spell book and I'm like, I'm not really sure what any of these do. Yeah. I think it's really good that they give them, if they do give them the new level 90s, time to work out what the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
It's very, very important that they do that.
But they did go on to say that this is only going to be included in Warlords of Draenor, that particular system. It won't be out before Warlords of Draenor. They did go on to say that Blizzard is aware that this boost will be available before this, but feels like the huge majority of people who will be using this feature before the expansion are already experienced players who already know the game very well. This is one limit of the system. Blizzard wants players to be able to use the feature, but also understands that there's a danger to see poorly played characters because of lack of knowledge.
Yeah, so pretty much they're saying that this new system won't be into Warlords of Draenor, so there might be a
You'll
couple
still
of
be
shooters,
able, you'll still be able to get the level 90 boost, but you won't be able to...
If it is your first one, then you won't have that system where it kind of...
You'll have all your abilities straight away and everything, so which is a bad thing, but yeah, they've acknowledged that. Now, on the subject of dungeons and scenarios, it was said in an interview that Mr. Pandaria heroic dungeons were too easy for too many players, which is somewhat necessary due to having normal difficulty dungeons at level 90. Warlords of Draenor fixes this by having both normal and heroic dungeons at level 100. Normal dungeons will likely to be similar to the Mr. Pandaria heroic dungeon difficulty, while heroic will be more challenging.
Yes.
Which is so good.
I like this very, very much, because once again, these heroics, like, you can go into the heroics when you've just leveled up, and you're like an all greens, and you can ruffle stomp it. Yeah. You should still, it's fine that you're able to do it, but it shouldn't be ruffle stompy. It should be very, very difficult if you've just got greens.
Well, I don't know if anyone remembers back to just the Cataclysm heroics. It was so amazing. They were good, they were fun, they were interesting, and they were fucking difficult for the first few weeks. If you didn't have the gear, they hurt. Yeah.
I remember like when a group of people in our guild got to level 90 very, very quickly, and it took them like 2 or 3 hours to get through Stone Core and Heroic.
Yeah.
Because it was that difficult, because they were all in really trash gear and they'd never been there before. That is not a bad thing.
That's awesome.
That is not a bad thing whatsoever. Like, because at the moment, some people might think, oh, I don't want to spend all that time in a dungeon. Oh, it's too long. You don't spend any time in a dungeon now because it's just shit. There's nothing there. I'd rather spend 3 hours doing something difficult than 5 minutes doing something that's shit. So yeah, really, really good that is going to be there. Hopefully they do make it so that the difficulty is quite quite hard.
And an interesting thing they did say is that Raid Finder would be balanced around players having gear from normal difficulty dungeons. So they're not expecting people with... They're not expecting everyone to be getting into these heroic 5-mans. Yeah. Which is an even better thing. I think it's really good.
Yeah, it sounds really sweet, yeah.
I'm really looking forward to them. They went on to say that gear progression will likely use normal difficulty dungeons to gear up for Raid Finder, and heroic difficulty dungeons to gear up for normal difficulty raids. That's all the flexes and everything.
So that sounds pretty good, to be honest. That it is going to actually be quite a important part of
it seems like a good way of doing it.
Like, overall, I'm pretty happy with the way that is going to be. Now, they did also say that the challenge mode daily quest in Warlords of Draenor, because you remember there is actually one now.
There's one in Mist, but there's no point doing it.
There's no point doing it at all. But it will actually give you a piece of gear that is on par with or better than the Raid Finder loot. Even before Raid Finder and maybe even the raids are even open. So you should be able to get some gear if you do those challenge mode dailies, which is pretty fucking cool that they're going to give you some actual decent gear. This will be awarded to anyone who completes the dungeon, meaning that there isn't a time requirement. However, I've actually heard other places that it's actually going to be bronze or higher.
There is actually other information that has said bronze or higher, so it looks like Blizz don't even know. But either way, very cool system. I like the idea of that.
Now, a little bit about scenarios is that Warlords of Draenor leveling, they said that it will use some of the solo scenarios at the end of the zone. You know, like in Isle of Thunder, you had those solo scenarios, which were a pain on the arse if you're a healer.
They were just so shit.
They were pretty...
I didn't like them personally. I don't really like them, but yeah, it looks like they're coming back. But hopefully they're not horrible.
Well, to be honest, I think it allows them to do more creative things in order to to do with story and stuff like that, because like a load of random crap can happen. I think if it's one at the end of a zone, like as the finale to the quest, where there's some like fucking huge battle that normally wouldn't be able to take place on, like, because if everyone was doing it, it's all face on top of each other, like the server will explode. I think it'll be good because it'll allow extra storytelling in, like, say there is some fat battle. I think it'll be good. You don't particularly...
I just don't like it. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not with you on that one. I just don't like it.
I think it'll be actually pretty cool, as long as they don't make it so... They've just got to be good scenarios, that's all. So, hopefully, we'll have to see how that turns out.
Anyway, moving away from that boring shit to the shit that's important. Raids!
Raids!
They've been talking about raids. It started off to say that Highmall, which is your very first one.
Babby's first instance.
Yeah, it's going to be your first raid, which will be in Nagrand. It was going to have 6 bosses, but they have actually made a new boss for it.
They've made a 7th boss.
Yeah, since BlizzCon, because when BlizzCon came out, they said, yep, Highmall, 6 bosses, JK, 7 bosses.
That's interesting. Maybe it'll be like the heroic only boss. And maybe
I don't know what they're doing.
In order to get into it, you need to clear the other place fully on heroic, and then like the last boss drops a key, which opens that boss's room or something. I think that would be pretty
I think you should be
cool.
Dev, Alex. Anyway.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to write Blizzard a letter. But either way, they did say that Highmoor is going to be very non-linear with a layout that is kind of similar to Firelands. So it's going to be like, well, Firelands is very open. It's outdoor area with optional bosses, and then you've got to kill all of them in any order.
Then you have to kill the final two.
Yeah, the final 2 bosses. So that sounds really, really cool.
And then they went on to say that the Blackrock Foundry, which will be the second raid instance, which is, well, I suppose the next tier, which is in the same tier. Kind of the same way that they released Miss. With the first 3 instances. It has a similar layout to Icecrown Citadel, with 3 wings of 3 bosses in each. You can do these wings in any order you want, granting access to Blackhand after all 3 are complete. I really think that's a nice little layout as well. It's kind of like, because I really like the way ICC was done anyway, even though pretty much everyone goes from left and then just goes round, like do poison, then blood, then thingy. Hopefully it isn't like that, and you can just go YOLO and do whatever the hell you want in any different place. So I really like the sound of that. Nice options in raids. And there was also some speculation about how many tiers Warlords of Draenor would have, because people seem to think that for each Warlord, there would be a new tier. But they have said
8 tiers or something.
But they have said that you may see 2 or 3 in the first raid tier.
Okay, so there's going to be multiple of the Warlords in the single tiers, so
maybe even in the same instance.
Yeah,
so we'll have to see how that goes. Now, they did give us a bit of a schedule that they said that the first raid will be open on the second week of the expansion, with the second raid opening a few weeks later, so that would be your Blackrock Foundry. Only raid finder difficulty will be gated by wing. All other difficulties will be fully open when they are released. Raid encounters will have more interesting mechanics for healers, which is kind of interesting, allowing them to avoid the boredom that comes with just spamming the same skill over and over.
Now, to be honest, I can't really talk on part of the healers. This is more your...
Well, I can talk all fucking day about healers, but yeah, this is interesting because healing right now, especially if you're in a 25-man guild, and it's probably going to be very similar for Mythic if they keep it the same way it is now, you're more or less just spamming a rotation. Quite a lot of the healers now, you barely even need to look at your, like, grid or raid frames to heal. You just don't need to.
Right.
Because you can just do a healing rotation, and because of all the smart heals and everything, it's going to end up healing them anyway.
It'll probably heal them, fuck it.
Exactly, that is very much the attitude, especially if you have a lot of gear. That it's such an easy pattern to fall into. For example, when I'm on my Paladin, I very, very rarely look at raid frames. I just spam Radiance and just spam Light. It's just get as much Holy Power as quick as you possibly can and then press Light Dawn. That's Holy Paladin right now. Fucking boring. But, meh. I still enjoy it. But yeah, it looks like they are focusing some more stuff for healers. So, an example I was like thinking of maybe what they could do is maybe you need to keep a mob at a certain percentage of health, maybe like that, or above a certain percentage of health. Or anything like that. If you have to do something like that, so you actually have to think about what spells to press, that makes things more interesting. I mean, there's a lot of things they could do with that, I'm sure.
Hopefully they don't put in really bad gimmicky mechanics like, oh no, in order to use this lever, you need to be a healer. Oh, sorry. Like, this is an interesting mechanic for healers.
That'd just be shit.
Yeah, so hopefully they do actually think about what healers are and what they need to do in order to make it more fun. So,
I mean, if they could make them almost a support role rather than just heal people... That'd be cool.
Maybe.
They also expanded on loot a bit, and they said that the amount of loot that will drop when you are not using personal loot depends on the amount of players that are in the raid that are eligible for loot on that boss. So if almost everyone in that raid is locked out for that boss on loot, so we're talking flex.
Yeah, we're talking flex.
There is a chance it won't drop any loot at all. So that is going to prevent guilds from, like, doing flex over and over again and then just letting one individual person take out all the loot every single time. This way you need to have lots of ults or something like that if you was to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think that's a good thing, because otherwise people will just keep running flex over and over again just to get all their guildies geared up. This way it's not stupid.
Yeah.
So it makes complete sense.
Now there is actually some new information about the world bosses. Blizzard said that the attempts at creating a hard world boss hasn't really worked out very well. If anyone remember Unduster? It's going to be really hard. Yeah. Guilds are going to have to team up together to take this guy down. No, you just send 300 retards at it, slam your face into it until it dies. So you didn't really turn out that well, Blizz. They did say that the Shah of Anger may have been the most successful world boss in Mists of Pandaria. They said it was accessible, it felt epic, and you could see him while you're leveling. I think seeing it while you're leveling is an incredible thing to see. Because you're like, holy shit, I want to kill that.
Yeah, it's important.
So yeah, I think that's really, really good. Now, 3 different world bosses are planned for patch 6.0. Initially, 1 boss may be available with the like high mall quality loot. Then a few weeks later, a 2nd world boss could unlock that drops foundry quality loot. And then much later in the tier, a 3rd boss that could unlock that could drop some heroic raid quality gear. Of course, this is heroic and not mythic. They may have said that wrong.
I kind of don't think that the loot should be that good, because world bosses, I mean, like you said, all you need is 300 retards to just slap their face against it and then you get loot. But they did go on to say, if the rewards aren't good, players will start raiding and the world bosses won't be relevant anymore.
Yeah, so...
So they kind of have to make the world bosses relevant, but then make them hard.
Yeah, but then if they're hard, you just... World bosses are fundamentally flawed in that way. Back in the day, world bosses kind of worked because you had to be in a raid together, and the raid had... It was pretty much an outdoor raid. You couldn't just go and tag it and get the loot.
Yeah, and you can completely fuck people.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if... as an example, is Yorgos, I think? Is Yorgos in a Shara?
Yeah.
You could so easily screw that foot. I mean, like, if you was a class that could taunt, this is back in vanilla, and there was a guild killing it, if you could taunt that boss, you wipe them. And that's what I thought was really cool about it. It was almost like, you know, it was a once-a-week thing almost, or I think it was once every 3 days it spawned or something like that. And when it did spawn, everyone would rush there. And you'd try and kill it. You know, that was cool. And if you did manage to kill it, it was like, holy shit. Not only did we just kill this boss and we beat him, we beat all the players on the server.
Yeah.
That, to me, is cool. And that's why I think world bosses should be difficult. Maybe not with the mechanics that someone can just fuck you over by taunting it. I think that's really stupid. But, I don't know. I think world bosses being difficult is good.
Yeah, but it seems like maybe, because the game has changed so much, you don't need to like talk to anyone to do a world boss anymore. You just go and hit it once, or heal it once, or heal someone once who's attacking it. It does. I don't think it kind of... I don't like it. It
makes
weird.
me sad.
So, yeah.
I get what Blizzard is saying. I mean...
I think if it drops loot, that's good and everything, but in order to make it difficult, at the moment difficulty is just matched by, like, volume of players. You just throw more players at it. Whereas back in the day, you couldn't throw more players at it because only one raid set could tag it. So that's how it could be difficult. So, like, it's very, very... I really like world bosses, but, like, they're kind of fundamentally flawed at the same time.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see what they really do with that, because who knows, they might be amazing.
Now, there are some new plans for how Proving Grounds is going to work, and I really like this change. So, in one of these recent interviews, it was stated that Proving Grounds will be updated for Warlords of Draenor, and Blizzard wants to expand its functionality. It'll be now used as a pre-requirement for raids. And you're probably thinking, what? How does that work? For example, players will need at least a silver medal in Proving Grounds to queue in a dungeon.
Yeah, for a random dungeon. You can still go to the random dungeon.
You can still go there with your friends.
Yeah, and everything, but to queue randomly, you need a silver medal. Holy shit! That's an amazing change. Like, Proving Grounds, for people who are just like, oh, I don't want to do Proving Grounds, it takes about 2 minutes to do silver.
Oh, yeah.
Like, well, it doesn't. It takes about, 15 minutes overall. But you know what I mean? It's not very difficult, but it does teach you some very basic mechanics. Like, move from shit. So I think that's really, really good that they are doing that. Now, Blizzard hopes that this will improve the experience of players in looking for dungeons and looking for raid, because a lot of people, like pretty much everyone who's asking us, is just like, oh, looking for raid so shit, everyone in it doesn't know what's going on. So hopefully...
The idea of Proving Grounds is to reduce that.
Yeah, so it kind of teaches them, because at the moment Proving Grounds is just an optional thing. I think if they make it a bit more of a requirement, so you have to prove yourself with Proving Grounds to go into a dungeon or raid, that sounds amazing.
It makes more sense.
Yeah.
So I really, really like that change.
Now, on top of all this random written information about Warlords of Draenor, people just say, oh, it's just righty words, and everyone lists of righty words. There's actually some video that you can go watch. I don't like
righty words.
Righty words are terrible, but the watchy videos are really interesting.
Watchy videos are the best.
The best. And a Korean website called Inven actually got hold of, like, beta footage, and they were
able to play Warlords of Draenor for like 5 hours or something.
Yeah, and they put a bunch of videos up on their YouTube channel showing what they're doing. Just saying, for the people who are watching, the guy who is playing might have never, like, touched a computer before or something. Bless him, he was a little bit special. But you do get to see all, like, the new walking animations. He does a couple of quests and stuff like that. It's actually quite cool to watch. You get to see him doing combat and go through some of the options as well.
I mean, the Orc Warlock looks amazing.
He does look really good. Like, the walk animation on him is pretty fucking cool. So if you do want to check that stuff out, there is links in the description below for your perusal.
But that's all the time we got for this week. Sorry guys, we're not going to be doing the mailbox this week. Anyone who has sent in their questions or their art the past week, we will feature in next week's show instead. And for the people who haven't, if you do want to be featured in next week's show, please do send in your mail to us on Facebook, Twitter and on Twitch. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.